Imagine stepping into the promising yet often intimidating realm of artificial intelligence. From myths of job replacers to the exciting reality of job enablers, AI is transforming industries unlike ever before. Today, I dive into an incisive conversation with Mashood Ahmed, an AI expert turning fear on its head and revealing the untapped potentials for project management. We shed light on innovative AI models, explore how we can use the new age tools to supercharge productivity, and dish on the importance of adaptability in a swift evolving landscape. If you've ever wondered what the intersection of AI and project management looks like, stay tuned. We're about to cross that junction together.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mashood, I became aware of you from the Project Management Institute. You had a great webinar on what the advances that AI is going to end up doing in the project management field. I mentioned to you before we actually started recording. You were putting me over the hump for the PDUs, and I'll make sure that everybody has the link to the presentation that you had come up for from the webinar to check it out because I thought it was great. Before we really jump into the AI piece and the project management piece, as far as how it's probably going to disrupt, AI is disrupting a lot of different industries there, and there's a lot of fear, trepidation, excitement. Put all the emotions that are out there you want to around it. But tell me a little bit about your background, your experiences, project management that kind of got you to the point where you're like, all right, I'm going to be the trendsetter with this.
Hey, thank you, John, for giving me the opportunity to speak at this platform. I'm so humbled and honored to deliver this webinar at projectmanagement.com. And I was really astonished when I see 2,800 people live on that webinar. And since then, over 15,000 more people have watched that webinar all over the world. I'm getting LinkedIn messages, emails, and other queries via email and other ways. And I'm so humbled and honored to have that. Now, talking about my background, I got my PMP in 2008. So I'm kind of an older guy. I don't look that old, but I am. And back in 2017, 2018, I was working overseas, kind of a bored with my day-to-day job, because, sometimes project management job becomes a routine as well. And I decided I want to do something new. And somebody mentioned, why don't you speak and share your knowledge and experience? I was like, that's a good idea. And then I started looking into the AI and project management. I did my first talk on this topic at PMI New Zealand in 2018, I believe, and 2019 at PMI Singapore, then PMI PMO in Denver, Colorado, and then a number of other chapter meetings around the globe. And then COVID happened, and I moved overseas back to Canada. And then last year, I was like, you know what? I need to see where I am and kind of start putting it together. Then I was invited to speak at a closing keynote speech at North Carolina PMI conference last year, August. I shared the recording with a bunch of folks on YouTube and on the LinkedIn, and again got some amazing feedback and so many calls after that one. And so that's how I get here. And just last year, I had about like 16 speaking engagements. This year, I've already booked like over 10 speaking engagements and many more counting. So it's a really exciting time and really humbled to share my knowledge, my experience, and my thoughts. What AI and how project management profession will be transformed by leveraging AI.
Absolutely. Have you had any interesting projects or something that kind of stood out over the last few years? Because obviously, if you're talking 2018, you're early, I would say, in the commercial industry. I know some government guys that have been doing stuff for a long time from some projects or some committees I had been on. But you're absolutely early because this, really didn't hit mainstream and public awareness until OpenAI a year and a half ago, year and 3 months ago.
Yeah. So to me, I haven't seen a commercial project management product yet to say that it has good AI functions and features. But I've been noticing Microsoft Outlook, Exchange, Google Gmail, they started introducing some of the AI features, right? Basic predicting what next word you're going to type. So that was a early indication. The other one that I noticed a few years earlier was that in Outlook, if somebody sends you an email saying, "Hey, Mashood, I'm looking for this document. Can you please share this document with me?" And if you don't respond for next 3 4 days, it will give you a little nudge and reminder that you need to follow up on that. So those were kind of things that I'm noticing. Beside that, back in 2017, 2018, there was a product called fireflies.com or fireflies.ai. I'm not sure what's the exact URL, but they really picked up during the COVID time, and they have a lot of productivity functions and features embedded in their Fireflies application, which is a meeting transcription
Okay.
application at that time. So I'm hoping in 2024, 25, we will see a lot more application. And the reason we don't see it is because there's a lot of fear about the governance, the
Yeah.
security, the privacy, and the ethics. And there are a lot of companies out there who have the products, I believe. They are in the stealth mode, and they are just waiting for these governance and ethics regulations to come up and comply so that they can comply and have the products in the market. I think it's just a matter of time.
That is something I'm sure you're not aware of this since we just met like 20 minutes ago. I actually sat on an AI. We created AI policy for our local school system here in Virginia. It's actually the first one in the
Hmm.
state. And it was, I don't want to call it an arduous process. It was definitely a spirited debate at times with everybody because I was one of just a handful of community members that were around that. And it was a situation where almost everybody, I would actually say 90% of the group, were like, hey, this train's left the station. We've got to put some guardrails around these things and then let
Hmm.
the other professionals within the education community figure out exactly how they want to do it. But don't just outright go, I don't understand this. We're going to sit on the sidelines type of thing. Are you seeing a lot more of that kind of across the board? Or are you seeing other people being a little, as you're going around and giving the talks, and we can talk more about project management specifically if you want to, that have that trepidation around that piece? Or are they looking for a way to embrace it?
I think it's a mixed bag depending on who you talk to. So there are people like me who would say, go and use ChatGPT or Google Bard or whatever tools available to you and figure it out and try your best. In a business world, we call it like working collaboratively, cooperatively, right? You're working on a project with a team member, you work together to brainstorm the ideas, brainstorm the solution. Why not use AI, large language model like Google Bard or ChatGPT, to brainstorm some ideas with you, right? I think that's important, and this is more important for somebody who is new to any profession. So if you're new to project manager, management role, for example, you may want to see what are the risks on this project. So you can simply go to ChatGPT, Google Bard, and just type in your project. Tell a little bit about your project, what your project is about, the content from project charter, and say, hey, can you give me 5 high probability risks on a project that I have to manage as a smart project manager? It will give you some ideas. If you take these ones, and again, this is what some of the Q&A in my Q&A session comes up a lot is, well, the risks that ChatGPT identifies are very common. And as a senior or seasoned PM, we all know that those risks do exist. And I totally agree with them. Yes, those are the risks that do exist. But how many of you really copy and put those risks in a risk
Mm.
register from the get go? Most of us don't. Okay. We start thinking about risk register when things start slipping, and then we're like, oh, we need to put a risk register, but we don't typically put a risk register from the get-go, from the beginning. So that's important thing is to understand what AI can do and take it as a leverage, something that it gives you 5 risks. So now you have 5 risks identified, it's put in a draft format, you edit it, you update it, you make your own. So that's your strategy, or that's your way to move into adopting AI into project management.
Well, I had heard some people were joking on LinkedIn recently. They said risk registers are where risks go to die. People put them in there and never reviews that. So but it's one of those things where you now have an assistant to make sure that those things don't go to death.
Yeah, and I remember somebody put on LinkedIn. I don't recall who he was. Somebody said, "Don't show me the status report. Show me your risk register.
You know,
If I want to see the health of your project, don't show me the status report." We all know that how the status report can be morphed and worded in a way. But if you look at the risk register, you will know what is happening on your project.
what one of the things that you had mentioned in your presentation was Gartner predicts that about 80% of the daily tasks are going to
Yes.
be eliminated. What are some of the bigger tasks for that type of stuff? Because a lot of project management work is that boring. I got to keep all the documentation up to date crap. Um,
I call it like mundane
yeah.
tasks. So what I do in my talks is I ask a question: is there anybody in the meeting
Mm.
room who loves to take the meeting minutes? I haven't found a one person yet. It's one of the tasks that all project managers hate. I hate it personally because if I take the meeting, somebody will challenge me. I did not say that. I said that. This means this, not this, and it's just getting in debate. So AI is there to help us to do those mundane tasks. So in my webinar, I give example of a meeting transcription. Put a meeting transcription into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize it, put an action item table, and then you can use that action item table to follow with your resources. If you take one step further, you can put those action items into your ticketing system, whether you're using a Jira, a project task, or any other tracking system where you want to follow on your task. So AI is there to help you with mundane tasks. The other challenge is that as a project manager, we spend a lot of time in meetings, going from one meeting to another. We forget, or we kind of sometimes lose things in translation because technically people are talking too much. And this is where AI is to help with the meeting transcription, action item, as well as you can put those meeting transcription into ChatGPT, for example, and say, hey, can you help me draft a statement of scope? Or can you help me draft a project charter? Now, what it will do is it will create a draft project charter, which will never be 100% correct. It will be 30-40% correct. And that puts you as a human in the loop, as a human powered AI. Now you will review the content, edit those content, make it your own, and then you don't have to look at the blank page. And what I call this is a blank page syndrome, right?
Yep.
We spend 4 hours in a meeting, we come to our desk, we are tired, we are having the fourth coffee of the day, and now I have to write a project charter from the scratch. By using some of these AI tools that I have demoed, you can literally have a draft of a document that you can just say, yep, this is good. I'm going to edit these sections and I'm going to make these sections my own. So those are some very low hanging use cases that we can adopt by leveraging AI.
Do you see? I don't know how far away some of this is when you're talking about predictive, but how about just managing your critical chain path, or you're sitting there, you've got your dependencies and float and all the stuff that's got to go into building the schedule to allow that as you start let's say you're managing similar projects where you're going, hey, I'm doing one like the last one. You've already managed this one. Let's clone it, but the time frame and let it organize and figure out the right workflow that needs to
Mhm.
happen and how long the work breakdown structure should be per task, things of that nature. Is there
Right.
anything there that you've seen that's doing? Because most of the stuff I've seen is very much what you said. It's kind of
Yeah.
that prompt. It's like here's the shortcut to start building the stuff out, but actually performing
Mhm.
some of the tasks.
I haven't seen anything yet, but if I'm saying that, it does not mean it does not
Sure.
exist. It means that I don't know. Um, and this will a lot will depend on the wide adoption of AI in general. We haven't seen the wide adoption of AI yet. A lot of companies are on fence. A lot of companies are saying, "Hey, don't use ChatGPT or Google Bard, or if you use it, anonymize the data." We have a privacy
Hmm.
concern about health information, patient information, private data. All sort of regulations that needs to come up, and we need to have So I also have a background in IT audit. So we need to have controls on the layer of AI which do not exist today. So I can give you an example. Let's say, and we did this in our mock exercise, right? So we asked one of my volunteer to act as a CIO, other one as a CFO, other one as the HR person, and have a meeting where they were hiring, and then they have to fire people and things like that. And then we have like 5 meeting transcription. And now I have access to that meeting where the HR director is saying that we have to let go some of our staff member because our financial does not look good. Now, this information, if I have access, I should not have access to that information, right? So we should
Yep.
have information classification and controls over who should have what level of access to what information. Now, on the other side, if you have a meeting transcription with your president of the company and you understand how he or she talks, what words he or she uses, what sentiment and what languages he or she prefers, you can simply ask ChatGPT saying, "Hey, I have 5 meeting transcription with our CEO or the president of the company. Based on this meeting transcription, what would you suggest me to have my elevator pitch to be the president so that I can sell this idea to the CEO of the company?" And ChatGPT, based on that context, will give you very good 30-second elevator pitch. So this is good. But on the same side, this could be misused in a negative way when somebody can ask a prompt, how can I misuse the power or the sentiment analysis, leveraging sentiment analysis, right? So all of those controls and all of those like access control, who should have access to what meeting transcription,
Right.
and what kind of prompts you can ask ChatGPT based on those meeting transcription. A lot of work needs to be done in that area. Once those roles and responsibilities and controls are defined, we will see a lot more adoption of AI in general and more specifically in projects. So, example in projects is that we did this mock exercise where I asked one of my resource to be a negative resource. Okay, so he was asking all these silly questions, delaying the project, do all those things, and everybody in the team was trying to help him out. And then we asked ChatGPT why there's a delay on the project, and they said, "Hey, because of Tim, because Tim is asking all these questions. That all those questions were answered before. He's not proactive. He's delaying on all of his tasks and all those things." So now ChatGPT can provide me this information based on the meeting transcription context. As a project manager, if I'm sitting in the meeting, I will get it. But now, if somebody else will have access to those meeting transcription, they can do those sentiment analysis on the resource capabilities and make that bias about that individual. So, those are some of the HR concerns that we have uncovered. And I think this will continue until we get to that level where we have proper audit controls and the roles and responsibilities defined.
No, that I think that's unquestionable. I'd seen some other Fortune 500 companies, some of the CIOs and CEOs were posting up there of how they were trying to figure out what the guardrails were going to be on that. And my comment back to one of them, I think this was like American Express or something. I said, you're either going to end up with something super vanilla where the answers are very generic, or you're going to end up on the other end of going, it came back and said what? And it's so and it is and because you're talking, that's the human element sitting there trying to figure out where that's going to be in the middle. And those are, I think that's crazy. That's going to be a crazy conversation because that's down to the individual, the company, the culture, the industry,
Mhm.
all of that
Yeah.
type of stuff.
And talking about Fortune 500, so if you go to ChatGPT site, they say for 80% of the Fortune 500 companies are using ChatGPT. And because I'm talking to so many people, and I'm wondering like, who is really using
Mm.
ChatGPT? So I drill down that code from ChatGPT, and I find that a little footnote that says this 80% we counted based on the people using the Fortune 500 email addresses to access ChatGPT. Now, what does that
Right.
mean is that the chief security officer or the IT auditors in those Fortune 500 companies, 80% of the Fortune 500 companies have no idea what information from those companies have been put into ChatGPT by the individuals using their corporate email addresses. That's a bigger risk question, big audit question for those Fortune 500
It's
companies.
that shadow IT problem that's been in IT forever, where those guys go rogue.
Forever.
It goes rogue, and you're like, you don't know what you don't know. I come from that background. I come from the cyber background as well with some of the. So
Mhm.
speaking my language with that because it's been a problem that's existed. But now you're talking about going, hey, let's dump all of our data into this as well, into this third party, versus using a
Mhm.
graphics imaging tool to make a something like Canva or something that marketing may not know about. Well, granted, AI is in that now as well, but it's absolutely a major problem. Um, so speaking of that, taking that piece of the IT auditing and the security piece of that, I know some people that are building their own. They've decided to build their own large language models in house. They're and
Mhm.
training it on their own data, and saying no, we're going to block everything. We're going to block the Chat GBTs. We're going to block the block the
Mhm.
bards. And then there's the flip side of that. There's other security consultants, AI architects that are going, no, 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 you're never going to be as secure as the software as a service. They've got the resources, they got the money to put in the security of those things, but you still have that risk of the larger model ingesting something, or like we were talking about, an employee dumping financial data in there because it's easier for it to
Mhm.
analyze. Where do you have a stance on that, or is this still this is that part of we got to figure this out?
Yeah. What I believe is that the larger companies like OpenAI, which is backed by Microsoft, Google has a Bard and a bunch of others, their AI model would be easily integrated with, so for example, Microsoft tools, Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Word. So you can do a lot of things in the Word, writing a Word document. It knows that you're writing a charter, so it can pick up the template. And, those sort of things will happen automatically within the office productivity. Same thing with Gmail, because a lot of startup companies, they don't have the Outlook, they have the Gmail accounts, right? So all their emails are in Gmail and all those things will be there. So I think the competition would be between Microsoft and Google here. And then there will be small startups or small niche specific AI models that will have a room in their niche industry. So example is radiology image or cancer detection, right? So this is a specific niche specialized in the hospital, in the healthcare, in the oncology area. They will have their own AI. They will not be able to use large language models for those, right? Or even the text image or image generation that is widely available to the public. So they have their niche. So they will have the room in the niche, but the main competition would be in between Google and Microsoft, and we will see how things turn around in next year or two.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is we're in the wild wild west right now. Everybody,
It is. I often say that this is like 1992,
hmm,
the birth of the internet.
everybody,
We're at the same time.
everybody's trying to get their thing out there to figure out how to make money off their thing as fast as possible. And it's again, it's this with OpenAI hitting the market the way it did, and then what was it? That $100 million within a day or a couple days or something. It was the
Mhm.
fastest software as a service thing that had ever released in history, and everybody's trying to piggyback off
Mhm.
of that. It's, I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy what the stuff has been. The iteration, because you actually talk about that a little bit in the presentation we talk about the learning and then unlearning of the different phases from the industrial
Yes.
revolution to the fourth phase
Yes.
of cyber now. Speaking of that, humans are resistant to change. We go through that every
Yes.
time. The horse and buggy
Hmm.
to the car. To is AI going to take my job, and robots and things of that nature. How do we get people over that resistance to change and actually start learning the tools to be more productive?
So humans are always like the stories, right? So in my talk, the one that you're referring to, I give a story of like the first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, third and fourth, right? And I try to mention that the time span it takes each revolution is getting shorter and shorter, and the amount of productivity or amount of new innovations are skyrocketing. And this will continue. So people who lost their jobs because of there are vehicles on the road and there are no horse carts on the road, they were able to transform themselves and get some factory jobs. And the people who were in the factory jobs in the second to third industrial revolution, when they lost some of their factory jobs, they were able to do the shipping and receiving, for example. So they were still able to do. Now, people who are in shipping and receiving, if they really want to excel, they really need to understand the ERP and all those modules and see how they can optimize their inventory on those. That is getting more complex. So what's going to continue to happen is that the roles require more complexity, and we will not have that many resources that can do the complex level of job. So it is very important for all of us to, what I mentioned in my talk is the two important skill set is ability to unlearn and ability to relearn. And what I mean by ability to unlearn is the way things used to work in the internet time or the mobile time will not work in the AI time frame. Okay. A thing that used to work 50 years back, 100 years back, we all know that that's not going to work. So we have to unlearn. We have to unlearn how not to use the internet, how not to use the technology, and we have to learn how to use it. Now, when I say ability to unlearn, it does not mean that you have to unlearn every single thing that you have learned in your life. Okay? Because somebody asked that question, does that mean that I have to learn every single thing? I'm like, no. It only means you have to unlearn the subset of the concepts that are impacted by this technological revolution. And then relearn the new way, relearn in a way that gives you leverage, that gives you value added that was not available to you before. Something that takes like 5 days, now you can do it in a couple of hours.
Right.
You give example of anybody uploading a financial data on to chat gpt, right? And if, let's say, you have a spreadsheet with complex data and details, you can simply upload that spreadsheet into chat gpt for the paid version and ask question
Mhm.
about that spreadsheet, saying, hey, can you give me this type of analysis based on this data? Can you give me this type of analysis? Or you can simply prompt, can you give me some interesting fact from this data? And it will give you interesting fact that you and I would never think about, right? So the technology is there. We have to unlearn, we have to relearn, and we need to continue this cycle. And this cycle will get shorter and shorter. So that's a challenge for the next generation. Like my kids, for example, is in my career, I have changed my job or my profession a few times. I was a software engineer, a business analyst, and a project manager now, and then whatever will transform in next time, right? So about every 5 to 10 years, I was changing my profession. Now, my kids probably have to change their profession more faster. And I believe they will not have a profession, they will have a hybrid skill set that they can leverage, and based on the role or the task required, they need to put a different hat and get the work done. So this is a different
Big
mindset
time.
concept. And I highly recommend everybody to read a book by Yuval Noah Harari, 21 Lessons for 21st Century. It gives you a lot of insight about all of this that is required us to be successful in 21st century.
No, that's crazy because that goes into the very counter of the way things have been, at least for the last decade, of specialization, 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 niching down, getting away from the
Hmm.
generalist person that can kind of step in and be. Sometimes use the word gap filler where you're stepping into stuff, but you've got the other
Hmm.
tools because a lot of that stuff is just you call them the mundane, the junk tasks features that go into that,
Hmm.
but it's changing that mindset. When you were talking about that unlearn, relearn, it's the resistance I've always heard is, well, that's the way we've always done it. That's the way we've always done it, and it's like, but not anymore, and
Not anymore.
and that's got to sink in.
And the reason we do that is because first industrial revolution lasted like
Mhm.
120 years, right? So they were like, three, four, five generation in that lasted in that time. So we get that mentality from there. Oh, this is how we've been doing for last 100 years. Second industrial revolution, about 60 years, same thing. Somebody joined that in that time frame, retired in that time frame, at least two or three generations. The third industrial revolution, the internet and technology, has been there for 30 years, right? And this is where we are now really realizing that we have to change faster, because before the change was happening forever. The human history, the formation of earth, for millions of years change was happening, but it was happening so slow that we did not notice at that time until last 50 years. For last 50 years, the change is happening so fast in front of our eyes that now we are noticing that this is hard to catch up. And that's where unlearning and relearning concept comes in.
No, and I one of the things that I hope that happens during that process, because we are seeing this major shakeup with companies adopting or at least experimenting with this, is that they're willing to invest in the people to do that. Because one of the things that we've seen, particularly in the cybersecurity industry, I got friends that run cyber training companies and stuff like this, are the corporations are have been unwilling to really invest in the people in some of the training, and it's got to be day one, hour one, minute one, hit the ground running. So if we're getting ready to
Mhm.
go through this next revolution with this, that they're willing to go, hey, I've already seen ads for AI prompt engineers. That's going to be a
Yes.
job. So is this going to be something that, all right, the high school's got to start thinking about training this, colleges needs to, or are the companies going to step up and start investing in people that way for that?
Yeah. So I agree that, and I agree with the prompting skills. I strongly disagree with the prompt engineering jobs will be there.
Okay.
So what I believe is the way we learned how to type. So you might remember, in 80s, like I remember in 80s, my elder cousin was going to learn how to use a
I
typewriter.
did.
That was a
I
big
did.
thing. That was a big thing at that time, right? And in my time in 90s, when internet was new, people will use to go and get training on how to surf the internet. Okay, and if you tell this thing to your 10-year-old kid at home that, hey, I took a classes for a typewriter, or I took a classes how to use the internet, how to search the internet, they will look at you like you're so dumb, right? So to me, it's not prompt engineering, it's a prompting skills. And what I strongly believe, every one of us have to learn the AI prompting skills. It's like how to browse the internet. It's like how to use a typewriter or keyboard, how to use a mouse. It will become such an essential skill in next 2 years that if you do not know how to prompt a large language model, you will not be considered for a job.
And that
So
and yeah, and that's one of those areas that I've seen a lot of people trying to use it as if they're talking to Google search versus having a conversation the way that it functions with a lot more detail, a lot more granularity, because as you know, the more info you can give it, the better the results you're going to get
mhm.
back.
Yes,
And I think that's where
yes.
there's a lot of learning curve around there.
There's a lot of learning curve, and there's a lot of specific information that you need to put to build the context about your queries or about the prompts that you're going to ask. So if you ask like a series of prompts based on a meeting transcription, okay, it will give you very concrete response or very relative response. But if you ask a same prompt, say for example, based on these last five meeting transcription, can you help me identify five risks? Okay, that's very specific based on the meeting transcription. Now it will give you based on what was discussed in different meetings, and then you can ask about, oh, what about this risk? Where do you get this risk? And it will try to explain to you where the context is coming from, rather than just going to Chat GPT and saying, hey, I'm running an ERP project. What are my five
Mm,
risks? It will give you very generic risk. So the more specific you are, the more you understand how to tone your AI prompt, the more you understand the different types of prompt and how to fine tune your prompts. Because what's going to happen in future is there will be applications that are built using the AI engine in the background. And what they would do is they need people who can help fine tune the prompts and say this prompt will work in this condition, but not in this condition. So if you have this context, this will work, not this one. So we would need people who have the prompting skills and who also know how to fine tune those prompts to get the exact results.
which makes sense. And some of the stuff, I don't know how much you. I went through a period, probably like everyone does, where they're saying, what's the new AI tools that are in the pipeline? And I saw a demo of one last year. It wasn't ready to be released. You may have been able to go get it off of GitHub or something like that, but it was actually going through the process of controlling the computer to write an email. So you would send it instructions that were like, "Hey,
Mhm.
open Google Chrome, go to Gmail, send an email to this
Yeah.
person," and it would do the whole thing. And tying this back
Yes.
to PM, imagine you're got to keep a Microsoft project file up to date, and you're like, "Hey, go update all these resource tabs, due date, schedule, blah 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 blah, progress." A lot of manual
So
labor taken off your
a
hands.
lot of manual labor taken off. And if you look at, there's a tool called Zapier
Mm-hmm.
or Make.com, and there are a bunch of
Yep.
others. They are the integration platforms. And what you can do is you can literally, so I remember maybe like 5 years back, 10 years back, I use a tool called IFTTT,
Yep.
if then that. So it's a similar thing. So, and I use like, if the stock price goes up or down, then send me alert or things like that, right? So you can use the same logic and build something on Zapier saying if you receive an email and if that person exists in your CRM, that means he's your customer and he's asking a question, then read out this email to your customer support. If the email comes in, the person is not in your customer database, maybe then you need to do some prompt and ask them to complete a form to collect some
Mm.
information like their phone number and address. So you can literally build number of automations. And then I've also seen automations built in within CRM where a customer sends you an email, and based on what is said in the email, it will use ChatGPT, for example, to draft a response to that particular question and direct the person to the specifically how to fix this problem. So not like 10 lines, but like
Yeah.
one line saying this is how you go and fix your problem. So all those things are possible. There's a lot of people who are working on the AI automation, and Zapier is one of the tools that I have used, and I find it very useful in number of those places where you can automate a bunch of these tasks.
Oh yeah. No, that's been around for a while. Bluntly speaking, I've got to
Yes.
get it better to work for scheduling my podcast stuff here. There's a step missing that would make my life easier. One other thing, and I actually only wrote part of it down in my notes, which is unusual for me. You talked about AI hallucination. Can you explain what I had never heard that term, or I'd heard it explained, but I never heard the term attached to it?
So there are a number of things that if you are learning the prompting skills, you need to understand what those terms are, right? Like, prompt leaking, prompt injection, prompt drifting, AI hallucination. So what is AI hallucination is, so basically what happens in the background in the large language model, it goes and read the unstructured data and try to make some connections. Okay. Sometimes it makes connection that makes sense to us. Sometimes it makes connection that does not make sense to us. And sometimes it makes connection and we find the new innovations through that. Right. So AI hallucination happens when AI thinks about something and try to connect two unrelated objects into one.
Okay.
And that may or may not be true. Right. So for example, how would you relate the stock price going up and down versus something going in the news about that company? There's a relationship to that, right? Now, If you have a tool that can make that relationship faster before the price goes down, you have a good tool and a good model. If you get a tool that makes join some news that is not related to that company, but say the stock price will go up and down, that's the false answer, right? And that's what happens when we talk about the AI hallucination, when these large language models connect unconnected things and start overthinking. So hallucination is, in a human terms, is like overthinking, right? So I'm hallucinating, meaning I'm thinking that people are following me, people are chasing me, FIA, CIA, yada yada is chasing
But
me.
they are.
I have I have the secrets to the atomic bomb. I can make the atomic bomb in a house. You know, I'm hallucinating. Okay, I'm just connecting things that I'm superior to other people, and this is the same thing that happens in AI. But if we put the controls in a way that parameters, like, hey, Mashhood, I'm not an atomic science engineer. I don't have a degree. I don't understand atomic science or atomic bombs, yada yada. You know, I'm a normal citizen. There's no point of agencies to follow me. So just cool down, be easy, right? So that's how I would do it. But now, if I'm hallucinating, I would just overthink that. Hey, you know what? It's gonna happen, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna save the world, or I'm gonna do whatever the situation is. So that's hallucination, and this has happened because the parameters are not set properly.
Okay.
You give access to different data set that AI is not trying to connect each other, and that's where it get missed.
And is this a situation where you need to really understand your industry or your field to just not blanket accept the results that it pops out, where you actually know enough to go, that's weird. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and this is why I always say that it's a human in the loop. And I always say that never trust the output you receive from any AI model as 100% accurate. It's never be 100% accurate. You have to read and you have to make it own, and you have to understand how you are justifying it, because it's important. Because let's say, as a project manager, I'm writing a project charter and I put something in a project charter that was discussed as out of the scope, in scope. If I put that in a document and send it to my sponsor for signature, my reputation as at a risk, not the chat GPT.
Right.
So we all need to understand is that even if we are using the AI model in the background, it is our person, my reputation at the risk for using the tool. So be careful on what tool you're using. Never ever trust 100% on any AI model. Make sure to read every single thing and make sure to have human in the loop before you proceed.
Now, can you talk a little bit about some of the programs or projects that you're working on? In I know you've got your prompting tool, and I'll make sure the links are in the show notes. But
Yeah.
any special PM AI
Yeah.
tools you're working on?
Okay. So I'm going to talk about, so one is very generic. So I developed a AI prompt guide for the project managers last year. So if any one of you visit pmassistant.ai, you can download the AI prompt guide. And I'm planning to revise that guide this month and hopefully release a new version by end of the month. But if you still go, you sign up, you can download that copy, and whenever I have the new version, I will send it to you. Last year, I was engaged with a client of mine called the company called raidlog.com. So it's raidlog.com, and most of the senior project managers have used a raidlog tool, which is risk, action, issues, and decisions. So it's basic tool that uses AI in the background to identify new risk, to identify new actions, to identify new issues, and to identify new decisions that you are making on the project. So I helped raidlog.com to build up their roadmap. I have a monthly call with their CEO, and I had that call this morning as well. So if you want to try it out, go to raidlog.com, sign up by yourself, and see if you like it. Again, I'm not sure if they are offering the AI version for free, but if anybody would like to get the AI version for free, let me know. I will put a recommendation. And the last that is something that I'm really keen to develop is project management assistant.ai app. And that solution, once developed, would have, so basically what will happen as a project manager, the difficult task is meetings, managing those meetings. So what will happen is that you will give access to your calendar to project manage PM assistant.ai, and then every single meeting the PM assistant will join the meeting with you, will take the meeting transcription, will come up with a summary, will come up with like action item table, and then there will be hierarchy of prompts in the background. So for example, if you are in a project initiation meetings, you will ask different questions versus you are in a project closure or in between the project execution. So we will have those prompts, but again, that's in a pipeline. We are at a very early stage. If anybody would like to explore at pmassistant.ai, we do have a meeting analyzer where you can upload a meeting transcription, and then it will give you the attendance, the summary of the meeting, and the action item table from that meeting transcription.
Very cool. It's in a way it's similar to some of the AI that's been built in. I'm going to use the podcasting platform here because when I get done, it will sit there and say, "Do you want show notes?" Well, yes, I do. Do you want timestamps on everything? Yes. Do you want us to scan your transcript and maybe find
Yeah.
something that's the most controversial thing that is said in here? That has not been exactly right, but the other stuff's been pretty good. So no, that's awesome.
Yeah. So again, the PM assistant is specific
Yep,
to the project manager. There's the podcast example you give is specific to the
exactly.
podcast
It's trained just
podcaster.
on that. Exactly.
So again, having that niche, having that body of knowledge for that particular domain would help. Like the way I say that the hierarchy of prompts,
Yep.
like if it's a project initiation, I'm interested to know who the stakeholders are, who the
Mhm.
sponsor is, how much budget we have, the team, their availability, and all those things. While if I'm closing the project, then I'm more interested in how satisfied my stakeholders are and what are the lessons learned, right? And then releasing the team and the making sure the project get handed over to the operational team. If I'm in the execution, then I'm asking different set of questions. So again, yes, so there will be like what I call like hierarchy of prompts that we have to put it together to make that a product reality.
Got two more questions and we'll wrap. What what do you think what would you like to see with AI integrating into project management that you see where it's at right now, you see where would you like it to get to in the near term?
So what I would like is like a meeting companion, as I said, so that I go to a bunch of meetings, spending 4 hours, 5 hours in a meeting. So give me summary. What do I need to do? What does my team need to do? And so that I can follow up with them easily. Then integrating those actions into some sort of tracking application like Project Task or Jira Ticket
Mhm.
or whatever ticketing system or Kanban board, for
Sure.
example, and then putting those things on the Kanban board and then making sure the teams are picking up and getting work done. So this is where I see the automation between AI and the PPM tool, and that would be really beneficial for the project managers. And then also have what I call a project manager dialogue or project manager assistant to help me be a better project manager. So there are so many project managers who got their PMP in the last few years, and they may not have experience to that level of project, right? But having a companion or assistant who can prompt you, would you like question like this? Would you like to do this? So for example, I was using a tool, I believe it's in Microsoft Teams, where you can enable, it's called um, it's called Language Companion. I'm forgetting the name. So it's a companion, and it will tell you in the real time what words you are using and if those words are inappropriate or not.
Interesting. Okay.
So I use the word that I have master's degree from University of Waterloo, and it prompted me in the real time that it's recommended not to use the word master, and instead you can use that I'm expert in this. I'm like, okay, fine. But then I was thinking about it, why it was suggesting master is an inappropriate word. And then I realized the master word is related in a history to
Hey, yep.
slavery, master and slave, and that's why it's not an appropriate word in the business setting. So I think it's called language coach. So those type of things for project managers. So if you are sitting in a meeting and somebody talks about something, then a tool might say, hey, as a project manager, you want to ask this question to get clarity on this. And once that happens, we will see a good potential and a tool that PM can use very to their benefit.
No, okay. I'm about to check that out there. Everybody I know tries to avoid Microsoft Teams for their tool of choice when it comes to things, but I'm gonna have to check that out now. That's pretty cool. Last one. Do you see we get to a point with AI, and at least on rudimentary tasks that are completed, that we're going to empower the AI to make the decisions at certain checkpoints or milestones versus having that trust but verify human always in the loop? I know I wouldn't trust it now because we've talked
Yeah.
about how it can come back with the hallucinations and bad
Mhm.
results. Do you think we're going to get there? Because you're going to see some people seeing that as a still another thing to remove to speed things up.
Yes. I don't think it will happen in the next 2 years, but in next 5 to 10 years, it will happen that we will start trusting the decisions made by AI. So right now, the challenge is the governance, the explainability of the AI, how AI is making decisions. That's why we need human in the loop. And once we cross the bridge where we know consistently that the decision AI is making is as good as human is making, and then yes, we will get to the point where we will let AI do a lot of work on our behalf, and at that time, our role will transform into strategic business enabler. We will not be project managers anymore. What I believe is that there will be multiple roles will come into the project management function. So it will be project manager, it could be a business, it could be domain expert, and it could be a configurator that one person would do a job that's required 10 people today by leveraging AI. So this is what I mean by when I say that the role of project manager will transform into strategic business enabler. Mean project manager will enable business to do things better, faster, at a much faster pace than ever before.
Excellent. I'll let you have the last word in on that. Where people want to reach out or find you, what's your method of
You
communication
can
of choice?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest, and most of us are on the LinkedIn. If you want to send me an email, you can send me an email at Mashood, Mashhood at pmassistant.ai. Sorry, and LinkedIn is the best and easiest way to get hold of me. And I try to post some content on the LinkedIn as well. So watch out, and your audience will learn a lot more in future.
Sounds good. Mashoud, I appreciate it. This has been great conversation. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you
Uh,
very much, John. Thank you
uh,
for having me. Thank you very much.